Meeting the government's share of the immediate earthquake costs will require a substantial front-loading of Crown debt in the next year or two. The scale of those extra costs is simply too large for any particular savings effort to offset them over the next year or two. In terms of our fiscal track, we intended to get back to meaningful surplus in 2014-15, a year earlier than forecast at the half-year update, and the Prime Minister signalled this in his speech at the start of the year. It now seems more likely that our return to surplus will be 2015-16, but we will have a better idea when we've completed budget forecasts. Due to the earthquake and other factors, this year's operating deficit before gains and losses could be more than 8% of GDP, or around $16 billion. That is up from the $11 billion forecast in December last year. As I've mentioned, these earthquake costs are likely to include at least $3 billion of EQC claims, costs for temporary housing and emergency welfare assistance, and substantial contributions to repairing local infrastructure. And we would expect a significant part of these costs to be included in the current year's deficits, even though the actual expenditure is likely to be spread over several years into the future. The 2010-11 deficit will also include the government's share of paying for leaky homes and problems built up over a decade. As these temporary factors drop out, recognising and accruing the costs of the earthquake, and significant items like the leaky homes and payout under the deposit guarantee, it is likely that we will be able to halve the deficit in 2011-12. So we're looking at a significantly larger deficit in 2010-11, reaching perhaps $16 billion or 8% of GDP, and looking to halve that in the next financial year, 2011-12. In terms of net crown debt, preliminary budget forecasts suggest that on current policy, net crown debt could exceed 30% of GDP, peaking in June 2014. We had hoped to keep net crown debt under 30% of GDP, and back in December we were forecasting a peak at around 28%. To put this in context, we currently are running net crown debt at about 14% of GDP, but it's going to be rising rapidly over the next 2 or 3 years.